Breaking tonight in the middle of a two-day debate over the Obamacare website, how well it's working, and whether we should trust the administration's claims, one top Republican senator now levels an explosive accusation. Welcome to the Kelly File, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. As the Obama administration says the website is greatly improved, new reports point to a major flaw. The part of the system that is supposed to deliver customer information to insurance companies, you log in your information, then they deliver it to the insurance companies to get you insurance, still does not work. And that means many people may not be able to get coverage at all, and others, worse, may think they have it and find out at the hospital or doctor's office they don't. This could be a real problem for the more than 5.6 million Americans who have had their insurance canceled. But while the administration officials today defended all of the improvements they claim they've made to healthcare.gov, the number 2 Republican in the Senate lashed out in an online chat with voters and is now getting national attention tonight for this.
I think the current administration has taken lying to a new level. To me, that's the one thing that I find most aggravating about what's happening in Washington these days, and particularly about this administration, which is a lack of accountability and the willingness to mislead people or provide them just demonstrably false information and expect to be able to move on. We've seen that most recently in the healthcare debate over if you like what you have, you can keep it, something that we can go back to 2010 and demonstrate that the Department of Health and Human Services knew was false.
Ed Henry is our chief White House correspondent with the very latest. Ed?
Megyn, I've reached out to White House officials tonight to react to Senator Cornyn. They have not yet chosen to do that. If they do, we'll update. But what he's doing with those comments is cutting right to the heart of this debate, an issue of credibility. That is why we've seen the president's approval ratings plummet in a whole series of polls in recent weeks, because it's on the issue of, do you find him trustworthy? That is something earlier in his presidency he was strong on, even despite opposition on some of his policies. He was strong on that. No longer. He's under a lot of fire over that. Then on the website today, because healthcare has been a big part of that credibility issue. Over the weekend, the administration said that they basically met that self-imposed deadline to fix the site for the vast majority of users. But today, administration officials confronted with the fact that a bunch of online users are finding a new page on healthcare.gov that basically says, okay, we've got your information, but now you've been queued. You're put on this other page. They're insisting today it's not an error message that people are on, in a line and they'll eventually enroll. But the question remains, are they just being moved from one waiting line to another? Then you have the fact that the insurance industry today sent out a warning, basically saying that they think there's problems with the back end of the system, sort of the checkout line, if you will, that information you share with the insurance company that you mentioned. And some people may not be able, even though they put their information in, may not get their insurance by January 1st. Here's an insurance industry spokesman.
What everybody wants to avoid is a situation in which consumers think they're enrolled, but their enrollments weren't able to be processed, they weren't able to pay their first month's premium, and their coverage actually isn't beginning on January 1st, as they may have thought.
Now, Jay Carney today said that administration officials at the key agency CMS, that we've heard so much about, have been reaching out to people who have been trying to enroll and telling them, you got to get your first check in, do all this paperwork, get it in so that you can get your insurance by January 1st. And he said they're confident they can get this done. But when pressed specifically, if people get that information in by December 23rd, which is the cutoff date, will they have insurance on January 1st? Can you assure them? He would not directly answer that. They've had so many hiccups before. They have to watch what they say, obviously, Megyn.
How is he pressing people to get their payment in if that part of the website doesn't work? How are they supposed to issue the payment?
How do you get the check in if we're not sure it's going to be processed, if the information is going to go to the insurance industry? Both Jay Carney and Secretary Sebelius today tried to broaden the argument, say, look, millions of people are going to get insurance. This is going to work out. We're turning the corner. But they're still confronting these tough questions.
They're going to get the insurance if they don't pay for it. Generally, they don't give you the insurance unless you cut them a check. Ed, thank you.
Thank you.
Just think about that. What sense does that make to make the paying part the hardest part now? I mean, is that going to encourage enrollment? As Ed just mentioned, after all the talk about getting people onto the healthcare.gov website, the bigger problem may still be getting them actually covered. Mark Thiessen's with me tonight. He's a fellow at the American Enterprise Institute and a former speechwriter for President George W. Bush. I mean, that's what I'm like. Shouldn't the paying part be the easiest, most seamless part of the process, Mark?
Well, you would think in a private sector that the business would want to get your money. But again, we're not dealing with the private sector. We're dealing with government. But this is the big problem. Senator Cornyn is absolutely right. They continue to lie about this thing. Just this weekend, they said the website is working with, this is a quote, private sector velocity and effectiveness. They actually said that. Unless Amazon.com works 90% of the time unless it's under maintenance, doesn't transmit your information when you make a purchase, and has an online waiting room where you can park until they have capacity for you to shop, it's not working with private sector velocity and effectiveness. And just take, for example, that 90% figure, okay? They said it works 90% of the time when it's not under maintenance. What does that mean? I mean, they don't say how long it's under maintenance. So they might as well just said it works when it doesn't work. It's a meaningless figure.
Well, the other thing with Amazon is when you go on, you certainly never get your Christmas gifts if you don't actually pay. You need to pay. They don't, in the private sector, they don't. Be quiet, Judge, it's not your segment yet. You have to pay before they'll give you the product. And, you know, we're laughing tonight, but the truth is, Mark, people literally could be showing up at doctor's offices and hospitals at some point in the new year only to then find out they don't have coverage because they thought they paid and they didn't, or they couldn't pay and something else happened.
Well, it's hard to pay when you haven't actually purchased an insurance policy. I mean, part of the problem with this is that they're selling Potemkin insurance policies. On one, they've fixed the front end, which is the user interface, where people go on and actually go on the website,
well,
and so people are going and making purchases. Sort of fixed, yeah. Well, okay, let's give them credit that they fixed it, but it's still crashing a little bit. But the back end that transmits the information to insurers isn't working. So it's basically what they've done is they built a Lexus with a lawnmower engine under the hood. It doesn't go anywhere. And so you've got these insurers getting calls, deluged with calls from consumers saying, hey, I want to talk to you about the insurance I just bought. And they're like, we don't have any record of you buying insurance. Or we have partial information. It's a Potemkin insurance policy. So how can they pay for that if they haven't actually signed them up for anything?
How is this going to manifest itself, though? Because the administration claims, look, this is not a law problem. It is a website problem. And as soon as we get this website up and running and every day we make improvements, people are going to see the wonderful products that we have to offer. They're going to run to the websites. They're going to buy the product. And that will solve itself. That will solve all of these problems.
Yeah, that's not the problem. The problem is the law. Look, the problem is they've got 5.6 million people who have lost their insurance that they have to sign up in 23 days in order to not have millions without coverage on January 1. That's 240,000 a day for the next 23 days. Even if the website worked perfectly, that's almost impossible. Then next year, you've got 50 million people who are going to lose their employer-based coverage, either have it dropped entirely or have it altered beyond recognition. So if people are mad about 5.5 million now, how are they going to feel about 50 million next year? And then Obama's lost his trust and credibility. I mean, it's fixing a website will not repair the bond of trust that he's broken with the American people.
All right. Well, we're going to have the other side with Ben LaBolt on that issue coming up. Mark, thank you.
Thank you, Megan.